Welcome to Unstitching ADHD Urban Ed Talks. I'm your host, Dr. Stanley Akio, and I am excited to introduce today's guest. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed guest, Dr. Jennifer Singer. Jen wears two remarkable hats. As a devoted parent navigating the unique journey of raising a child with ADHD, and as an insightful educator who brings passion and expertise to the classroom. Again, thank you for gracing our podcast today and for your openness in sharing your experiences. So, Dr. Jane, please can you introduce yourself to our listeners? We are excited to learn more about you.
So, Jennifer Singer, I've had an opportunity to be in the world of education for over 20 years, and I have been everything from a general education teacher to a special education teacher to doing professional learning for educators to being a director of pupil personnel services, a principal of a non-district or a private school, as well as now I'm working for the state education department. So I've had a lot of great experiences there, but my most rewarding experience, of course, is having my family and having my two boys that I raise, and one who has the spontaneity and the loveliness of ADHD.
Could you share your experience as a parent raising a child with ADHD?
I know that you know this already, but I am a huge fan of Brene Brown, and I just actually listened to her own podcast. And she recently, on March 20th, she identified that she was in a salon getting her hair done, and this gentleman was a private pilot, and he engaged in a conversation with her about the human scale and learning to fly. And it was not anything to do with ADHD, but the actual example that he used resonated significantly with me. And that's where I definitely jolted me to want to share that in our conversation today. So the pilot identified that when you're learning to fly, that you learn in a two-seater plane. And that's how you learn. And when you're learning in a two-seater plane, when you turn left, your whole body moves left. When you turn right, your whole body moves right. And if you get a gust of wind, then you feel that gust of wind under you. And when you're going down, you're kind of disoriented because you're just in this human scale, but you have all those feelings around you. You could feel it going this way and that way. And this experience of being a new pilot, I have to say, maybe similar to a student, or a child that feels who has ADHD. And that's how I feel sometimes when I experience my son. And they feel an experience and they get absorbed so much within that moment. And that's where I really feel that that's how it feels sometimes. And one of the things that he said, when a pilot is learning too, it's called what's called controlled flight into the terrain. And that's really when they crash. The entire time they think they have controlled flight. They think they've got this, right? The entire time. And then all of a sudden, before they know it, they've crashed. And I feel sometimes that's what it's like for my son. I know that he's in control. He feels like he's in control. He's confident. And then all of a sudden, nope, he, something, he crashed, meaning he had a big, unexpected behavior, or, he is really feeling a certain emotion, or he's just, has some negative self-talk, So I really feel like that scenario really identifies how it is kind of raising a child too, because sometimes you're just you're on this plane ride and you're just they're in control, and you have to just let them give that control to them to be successful.
Oh, that's insightful. So how was your child diagnosed? What were the initial signs or challenges that you noticed?
Well, as you know, there's a lot of comorbidity with, ADHD. So ADHD can sometimes be linked with other things. And at first, there was, people would say he's all boy, but it really was, he's also has anxiety as well. And that was what really came out first. It was the anxiety. So he would have really big emotions about the weather, it's raining and oh my goodness, we're going to have a flood, or we have invisible fence around our house and the dog's going to escape the visible fence. We're never going to see him again. Having these really big emotions and that anxiety piece, for him. So really we started down the journey of having, those anxiety components and, just having those big feels around and just feeling everything. Like he is that person that will connect and feel and have so much empathy for somebody. And yet in the same breath that like he has a strong conviction of like social justice, or even that like someone's wronged, right? And he can't stand it. And I think that's just part of like, he feels all the feels and he just knows something in his gut's not right, And so the journey of how he got diagnosed was we started off with anxiety. We went to, thank goodness we have resources, and he was, we went to a therapist, and said, hey, we're going through these different things. And of course, when he's talking in that one-to-one setting, he is an active, young boy. And they're like, we think he has some of these tendencies and that. I'm like, yeah, for the ADHD of, not more of the hyperactivity component more than the inattentive part. Like he doesn't have that necessarily inattentive piece. And he can just continue, and he's very expressive and talk about all the pieces, but as fast as his mouth goes, his body goes sometimes just as fast. So like that peak and valley was really hard for him to manage. And he was very articulate at a young age. So he's still only a third grader. So he's very young still. And one of the pieces was for him was he was just having all these swings. Like it was like the emotional swings, but then it was like, he kept on saying like, Mom, I feel like there's something in my body. Like I can't control it. Like he goes, no matter how much I try, I can't control it. And we're like, okay. And so we went the therapy route, which he still is in therapy, which is fantastic, And then we just went through those whole other pieces of, those regulation, working on a lot of different skills there. But then we just came to the decision too, as a family, that maybe it is time to try some medication, and that's where we're at right now. He says he doesn't like it. And that's something that we're, working through as a family right now. And the part that he doesn't like is he doesn't eat. So like he says I have to eat before I get my medicine, so I can not, because I don't eat the rest of the day. And then sometimes he gets on these like ravenous, eating binges at night for the most part. He goes, I just don't like that part about it. And so that's really like our journey with it, honestly, because my husband and I are both educators, and we just saw that like the great pieces that happen because of therapy, work things through. Like we're a huge proponent of, having that type of connection with somebody, if that works for you. It doesn't work for everybody. And we knew he was a talker. He's a perfect candidate for that type of piece. So really what we just said, he just started doing that. And then we introduced, he said, hey, you could potentially take some, medicine. And sometimes that makes you feel a little bit better, or makes you feel like you have more control of like your body. And he does say he likes it at school because he can focus and things like that, but he doesn't like to take it on the weekends. He wants to be, and we can tell the difference, and we're fine with it. Like we're really fine kind of either way right now. There is a big difference at school. Like they can notice a big difference, and we can support that as a family at this point in time. He does well, he's doing, great. Full transparency, he doesn't have any plans or anything like that. We're just managing it with communication with the teacher, really. Like I think that's the biggest piece as like a parent. Like I know that there's sometimes a lot of shame with certain diagnoses and things like that, and how we celebrate it. Like we talk about the celebrations of everyone has different, diagnoses. They might not know it, but we all have different things that make us who we are. And those are wonderful things. And that's how we really celebrate it as a family. And we actually, before I came up here to talk to you tonight, we talked as a family. I'm like, I'm going to go on, I called you Dr. Stanley's, podcast. And they're like, oh yeah. And I said, he goes, we talked what a podcast is and everything. But then we just said, he's like, what is it about? And I'm like, oh, let me show you the logo. Let me tell you what's, they're like, oh, ADHD. And my oldest goes, oh, I know what that is. He goes, I think my friend has it. And I said, oh, why do you think that? And he really said, like, he's really good at sports. He has a lot of energy, and it's really hard for him to sit still in class. And I said, oh, how did you know that? He's like, I just know that. And I was just like, so I feel like that demystification maybe is happening, or they're talking about it more in the school, which I think is great. And then my youngest said to me, he goes, oh, Mom, I know people with ADHD. And I was like, just waiting for him to say, like we've talked about, like we're very transparent, like we name what people have and we talk about, different things. And then Charlie goes, I don't you have it, buddy? Like, and he goes, oh yeah, I do. Like, so it was just really that piece of like just talking about it and demystifying and having that communication. So like we talk about it at home. We talk about all the time about strategies to use, state testing is a big piece right now for kids. And like, right, what we did last night was we talked about state testing. He was really nervous about it. And he's like, well, one of my buddies does it have to take the test? And I'm like, oh, I go, that is an option, I guess. But I go, but for us, I go, it's all about trying your best and using your strategies. That's all that we want, that we care about. And he's like, yeah. I go, so how'd you feel about taking it? He goes like, no, I think I can do that, So like it was working through that and doing those positive affirmations and then also giving him a fidget. And I'm like, you might not be able to use it during the test. And, and just talking through those things. And I wrote to his teacher and said, this is what we did last night. And lo and behold, he had a fantastic day today because she's like, I'll give him that love and extra support right before that like boost in the arm, that he needs. And really it just continual communication with the school, I think is really important. But I think it sometimes has to be balanced because sometimes you don't want to over give as a parent. And the positive is, for me, I really have a lot of knowledge about the system, which I know that not everybody does have that knowledge, but I feel very comfortable. This is the first year that I feel really comfortable that his teacher gets it. Like she gets it and she understands all those different pieces. She says, I'm pushing him sometimes because he needs to like, learn how to, feel how this is, but she has like different regulation things for him to use. And it's just really open. So I think that's one of the pieces of how do I support my child? I listen to him every day. We do at home. This is just our own strategy that we do as parents. We do the thermometer of like how he's feeling and did he have unexpected behaviors today or unexpected feelings that maybe caught people by surprise or yourself by surprise. And we talk about that all the time. So I think that's really important to do with your child. And the younger that you can do and just be more open about it, I think is better because otherwise kids can read you like a glove. They know when you're thinking differently about something or you might be concerned or you might have some, stigma about it. They can pick up on it. And then I think that all students, but definitely students, they're perceptive. They know. And so, that's where really, I think where I'm at for right now for him of like just communicating, getting how he feels and moving forward. And it's just been it's been a journey. Don't trust me. It's not been easy. At times I'm like, got another phone call. Like, how are we going to deal with this? And that it's been tough. Like it's not been all sunshine and roses by any imagination, but he's growing, he's learning. We're celebrating those small pieces. So like sometimes when he does have like big emotions or like kind of like, a reaction that, is like, oh gosh, he just could have all this, energy. I go, like, we kind of capture the positive too as a parent. Like we capture that positive of like, buddy, you know what, this is what you did. You noticed it and you tried to stop yourself or you asked for help. And that was really great. He goes, but I still had that big emotion. I'm like, you still had the big emotion, and that's okay. You can have those big emotions, but we have to be able to go because everyone has big emotions, but we just have to be able to use our big emotions in a way that we just have to be really thoughtful about the environment. And I think that kind of like segues in as an educator too. Like, how do I support students? And I think this is where I've been very fortunate and grateful for all the training and learning I've had as an educator. Was really has helped with my parenting approach. Like I have some skills as an educator that I'm like, oh, thank goodness I have it. And then there's some other things I learn at home all the time. I'm like, oh gosh, how naive was I as an educator, right? So it helps out both of those sides. But one of the things I think is really important that I do as a parent and that I do as an educator is I do a self-assessment of me first. And because one of the things for students or even my child with like ADHD, that they want structure, but they want that flexibility of structure too. Like they want that controlled structure. And I think you have to do a self-assessment of yourself and the environment, because like, what's my own understanding of the need? Like, yeah, I see students all day long with different, needs, and there's a continuum. Like, just because there's a continuum, there's all the way over to the right or all the way to the left. There's some in the middle, and they're everyone in between. So what's my understanding of like whatever the need is? It could be ADHD, it could be something else, but really with ADHD, and maybe the need isn't necessarily the need of the individual, but what's the need for myself? Like what's the need that I need to like understand more, gain more perspective of? It could be a need of like learning more about, how to parent better as, someone who has ADHD, or how to be an educator to really support students. But I think that's a critical part. Like you have to say like, what's my own understanding of the need, or what do I need to get, because if you do this quick assessment, like you're like, okay, I got what I have. But these next two questions I think are the biggest two, is what kindles specific like emotions, beliefs, or biases of this need, and stop you in that moment. Because really the question is, how am I feeling right now whenever that thing is happening, or how that perception, or how you're perceiving that child or my own son. Like, what's my feeling? Oh, I just came home from work and I'm hustling in and I have all these things in my hand, and then something happens. Well, was that something happened really that elevator, or was it because of where I was with my, a certain emotion where I was carrying? But it's really, how are you feeling? Like, what kindles some of those things? Because you might have your own biases. You might have your own triggers that a student with ADHD or your own child would be like, oh, that's really triggering for me, But then the third question really is, what's the culture? What's the environment like for that child, or that you're currently in? Because how I might do something as an educator in a school might be completely different than I do in the home, Or if it's in the community, if I'm privately having a conversation versus if I'm in the community or in front of a class, like that is different of how I'm going to approach that. Or like sometimes of what's the norms of that setting, or what's that mission or that culture, or those like, those, the different like culture around it. Like, what does that look like? So you might have to approach it differently, where you're like, I need to talk myself down because it's not going to be good for anyone. Or it could be like, I know that everyone doesn't necessarily have this knowledge, so I might talk through it differently so everyone understands like the situation. And I really think that self-assessment of yourself and the environment is really important. So like I said, those three questions, like what's my own understanding of the need, which could be the student need or my own need. And I think by you doing that and showing that, you're modeling as well. And it says like, just take a breath before, and like really take things in before you do. And I think that's one of the hard things sometimes for students to do, or my own child to do. Like let's like pause for a second. And then, and that now say something, and that's really hard to teach, but it's also such an essential skill. So, and I just think these probably could be expanded upon or omitted. Like if you already know the need, because you've been working with that student or that child, you might just have to check your feelings or the environment, because sometimes when even one person changes in that environment, you're like, nope, I have to change my reaction. So, but yeah, so, and I think it's just really important too that, as I was saying, there's that continuum, like things can mask. So like it's evolving sometimes. Like, so right now I say, yep, he has ADHD, but it could really be morphing more into the anxiety piece. Maybe it's more anxiety, but it's coming more out like like ADHD, or maybe it's going to morph into something, a little bit different. Maybe it's more of a sensory piece, or maybe it's more of a academic piece. Like, I don't know, but I think that's the important part of when you ask those things about like, how do you have to be just open and communicative and understanding like things can change and no one feels comfortable typically with change, but just try to like do that self-assessment, I think is really important.
Yeah. How did you advocate for your child with ADHD in collaboration with the school? Did you face challenges in getting the school and the community to understand your child's needs?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I know like for his school, like we're always relatively open because we feel that if they don't know, they can't help. Like that's kind of just our parenting, little bit of our core. And at times we do believe that just like anything in life, some things are not matches, but we have to work and persevere and learn about like if something's not a match. And sometimes educators are fantastic educators, but they're not necessarily a perfect match for that child. And there are those times that, um, we've been very lucky, but we have those like for our school, how it works, we get like, tell us about your child and like write what's like a good, what like they need for their learning or what, really sometimes could be a barrier or they have a hard time with. And we fill out that piece. And then this year, something that we haven't done, we really just advocated again to his teachers and reached out to the screening team because he changed schools and just said he really needs a teacher that looks like this, or has this type of approach that is, has a structure but has that care and love and understanding about what does that look like. And again, we're very fortunate. My husband also is in a program. He's a principal of a program, or assistant principal, excuse me, of a program that has often many children with ADHD in it. And it's more of I would say the perception of the whole would be more the rambunctious, outgoing, have a lot of different high unexpected behaviors. And I think from our perspective, when I say that is we know what it's like and we can really talk to teachers in a way that like help lead. I feel like we've done a lot of leading teachers to like kind of find the answer a little bit for some of his teachers, not all of his teachers, because some of his teachers have been fantastic. But one I'm thinking of, we had to hit a lead, do a little bit more leading. And we asked for parent teacher conferences outside of parent teacher conferences because we just thought it was super important. Like, or if something happened, like, because I don't know about any other child, but my son, for example, at night, it's like, oh, you're going to put him down to bed. And then all the things start to come. Like, it's like my head is racing. It needs to go somewhere. And I feel safe and I'm going to tell you. And I hope that always happens for all my children, that they're going to feel safe and they're going to come to me and tell me things. But it's typically at night that he's like, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And then it was, okay, Jen, pause. Like, you don't have to be mama bear. Like, that piece of check yourself first, like that self-assessment, and say to yourself, like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Is this something that he's just getting off his chest? And, we all need that person to vent to, or is this something more that we have to kind of explore? So since we've kind of been having that conversation and he knows I'm going to talk to school, but the important thing that we teach, and I think this is just like part of the counseling component too, is like we share if you say it's okay to share. Because sometimes they're not okay to share with everybody. And especially when they have some of those unexpected behaviors, like I don't trust that, and I don't want to share with this realm. So I think he knows now, like, do you want me to share that with your teacher or do you want me to find more information out? Because I go, and also coming back to the whole thing, like, that doesn't match what I think happened in this situation. And that reflecting back, like with him, it's like all that communication and what does that look like for him? And that's what we're just trying to teach him to like advocate for himself, to reach out to those teachers. And so to get back to your original question, I kind of did a slippery slope. Maybe, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but how do we advocate with teachers is just continue to be like open and positive with, with teachers, get more honey with, what was that saying? The honey with bees or bees with honey, like that's where we continue just to reflect and say, this is what he's reflecting back. He's a kid who feels all the feels. He's a kid that, has a strong justice about things, and I think that's just I don't want to create a narrative for him, but support how he's feeling so he can navigate those feelings. And that's really been essential for us. And again, I think, I know I've said this multiple times, I know how to navigate the school system and not everybody does. And stinks. And that's one of my advantages, and that's what I want to like help people with, because everyone has had their own experiences in those different pieces, and that's really challenging. And so people might be listening to this today like, that's so easy for her but not easy for me.
Mhm.
And that is, it's not light that I know that, I take that very to my heart, because it makes me sad that, or frustrated and mad, maybe all the emotions of like, it shouldn't be that hard for parents just to reach out. And I know, just being in education, and I know the heart is there, but sometimes information is not used in a way to help a child. And being in a chair position, and especially, sometimes I feel that ADHD, depending on who you talk to, could be like it's a mental health piece,
Mhm.
or it can be more of like a behavioral piece. And I think it's really important just to say, with it can be all of those things. I was going someplace else with that and I lost my train of thought.
Mhm. That's okay.
But yeah, it's really, I just want people to be able to, oh, I know what I was going to say. Got it. Um, is I tell parents when I was a chair that like, you have all this information. I don't need to know all of it. And I said, like, I'm not going to put that in, or like into this document, or like that's just going to be here, because you're working through that right now. And it's important that, yes, that is part of who they are as a person. Yes, sometimes, yes, we want to put that there, but sometimes it's like, that's not the thing right now that we want to focus on.
Mhm.
Or, and having that open and honest conversation is really hard, especially when people don't feel like they're heard. And that's why I continue to say, like, the best strategy is to communicate and communicate about it. Either if it's in your home to feel more comfortable and just having, that, then you can talk to others about it. I think it's just really hard for parents to feel how this is, because I know I've been in that situation where my child's doing something and I'm like, oh, everybody's looking at me. And then, like, how do I get out of this? Because now I'm not upset necessarily with what's happening. I know it's not the expectation that's supposed to happen. I know that that's not necessarily the norm, but I'm not necessarily upset with him or the situation. It's just all those other factors that come in with it. And I think that's really hard as a parent.
This is quite insightful. How can parents, without a background in education or specialized knowledge, support their children effectively in school and community?
So I think it's, talk to that teacher that you feel comfortable, or that person that you feel comfortable with. Sometimes it's like learning more from the nurse. Like, I'd even talk about the nurse for, she was great, and like talked about some of her own experiences with her own children as well as students in the class. There are different programs out there that are para education programs that are sometimes helpful. Like, there's like Starbridge that can be very helpful with some information of how to navigate things. I think there are some good programs through URMC, or the University of Rochester Medical Center. I think there's some good programs there. But then again, unfortunately, it's sometimes about access and what can you access. There are some great school programs that are like embedded in schools. I'm going more of the, like there's like primary project, or there's like second step, or, that's a curriculum piece. Like, there's those different pieces that when you learn potentially, and I know that sometimes time's a factor for parents. I understand that completely. But if you find something that, like, oh, they've been using these words like anger mountain, like, what is that? Like, research some of those terms, because your kids are savvy. They tell you stuff all the time. And I know for me too, like, it goes over my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, they were just talking about this. This is that was the connection. But I think it's just, I know that everyone's style is different. And
Mhm.
I just feel like, go with your gut and talk to the people that you feel that you have connections with. You can always, I know that sometimes people are more intimidated by administrators, but sometimes they can listen a little bit more intently and maybe give you some more direction of what that looks like. You could also just reach out and say, are there programs that, could help my son or daughter navigate things? And I try to always arm families with more information because I always tell them, like, I want to give you all the information, then you can discern of how you want to move forward with it. But there are people within the school that will help. But I also know there are people that are sometimes school adverse for a multitude of reasons, and that has to be honored as well. And I don't know what that balance is. Maybe I have too much information sometimes of how to best answer.
Yeah, Jane, what advice do you have for teachers or administrators struggling to create an inclusive classroom environment for students with ADHD amidst the challenges of managing a full classroom?
Always have a structured choice, which could be environmental, like a human need. Maybe it's yourself that you're going to help with that, a structured choice, or a material need. Like, because typically, not always, because I know I'm focusing more on the hyperactivity, but there is the inattentive type that will just be quiet and just sink into the background, and you're like, they're doing great when they might not be. And I think that that's the piece. You always have to have that structured choice. So like if it's like environmentally, like you're going to have them be able to stand up and sit down in their chair. You're going to purposely set these kids, in the environment where they can stand up or walk on a small carpet square by their desk. And yes, that's more elementary, but just think about the power of some of those elementary people. Like, oh, they could never work in the high school level. I know that I have put tape of where kids can walk in a high school classroom and said, this is your space. You can go right here in this space and I don't care. Like, this is what you need to do to be you. That's fine. You're not in anybody's way, and you structure it that way. Like, maybe that's the environmental piece. Or, like you have to have a human component. Like, you have to have some type of touch in with that student. It could be a multitude of different things. It could be just literally a check-in. It could be a Post-it note that you walk around with, and you put a Post-it note on the student's desk. And it could be anything like, you're doing great today, to, did you check question 9? And it's just that nonverbal prompt. Maybe that's that human piece that you need. Or maybe it's truly a material need. Maybe it's a fidget. Maybe it's something on your chair. Maybe it is an awakening activity for them that they have to do before they do actually their activity. Maybe they have to do some affirmations and things like that to get them going. But what's that structured choice? They're going to always get there. And I think that's the piece that I'm firm on. It doesn't matter if a student has ADHD or no diagnoses. The work always, it has to be completed. But how we complete it, there's a lot of different paths. So I think you have to have structured choice and have different pieces of like, oh, we're going to do writing right now. Well, they might sit there for 20 minutes and not write, but they truly might be thinking. And if they're not, but they're disturbing other kids because he's not writing or she's not writing. Is that a you problem as a teacher? Because that's one of your, as we talked about earlier, is that one of your, beliefs, emotions, biases, or is it, something that has to be done? But you always have to have something for them to do, a child to do. It has to be either mentally engaging for them, for sometimes that inattentive, they are dreaming about whatever they are dreaming about, or maybe they have to get some of that physical motion out, or maybe they have a part in the, where they have to have some emotional regulation where, that check in, check out with somebody, to really understand where they're feeling like, I need to go check in right now, or I need to pass the note from teacher to teacher. And yes, you have 20 students and they're all different levels or different paces and different needs. But the whole piece is, that's the piece of an educator that's the creative piece. That's the piece where you get to really show your talents and really lean on people. And you're not alone. Use your community. Talk to those other teachers, but listen. Kids are telling you something every single day by their body language, by how they write something on a paper. Their handwriting. How things are. Like, they're telling you stuff every single day. None of this is easy. Like, if you think there's going to be a quick fix, there's not. It takes time, patience, reflection. But I know there's so many amazing educators out there that have the tools, but it gets tiring.
What projects are you currently working on that you would like our listeners to know about?
I'm hopefully, looking to maybe write some articles and things like that. But I'm just so grateful, truly, to have this conversations. I'm always more than willing to have conversations and to provide, some perspective. But I'm only one person, and maybe
Mhm.
someone else's insight can help me be better as well. And I think that's that two-way conversation that I would love to continue.
Thank you so much for all you do. We are so grateful that you could share this time with us.
Thank you so much for having me today and letting me share this passion. I know a shared passion of yours, because we just want to empower others to be the best that they can be. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have a story to share, we invite you to reach out, subscribe, share, and join our community. Together, let's unstitch ADHD. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on our next episode. Have a wonderful day.